It's time for another football recruiting podcast here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. This is THI publisher Andrew Jones, and joining me is our very own Deana King, whom Chad Surratt referred to earlier this week as Miss King, which I love. I think that's pretty cool. So many players refer to you as Miss King because of the reverence that they do have for you, Deana. And today's podcast is a big one because earlier this afternoon, Mack Brown's program picked up commitments number 13 and 14 for the class of 2021. Rah-Rah Dillworth going at 4 o'clock. At 4:30, Jared Wilson. These are two really big commitments. Don't look at the star rating because we do think that there's a strong chance Rah-Rah can end up a 4-star. But the fact that Rah-Rah picked Carolina over Alabama, those were his two finalists, and Jared Wilson was once committed to Georgia, decommitted after he visited for Carolina's junior day in late January, and that's been a trend headed in Carolina's way ever since. This is a big day for Mack Brown's program, Deana.
Yeah, both of those. They're from the same area, Piedmont Triad and Forsyth County. Rah-Rah, as you said, I've been high on him the whole time. I think he's going to be his offer list was impressive. I know everybody has got him on. If we were buying stock in players, he would have been definitely a player that I would have bought stock in because, outside of the area around where he lives, he's come in with a lot. He had an outstanding junior year. He's a teammate of Javari Ritzy, who is higher ranked, the defensive end from Glenn. But Rah-Rah, he was the conference player of the year there in a pretty good 4A conference up here in the Forsyth County, and had almost 200 tackles and 22 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. He was all over the field. So, yeah, I like him. Jared Wilson plays in the same conference, West Forsyth, and we all know what talent has come out of West Forsyth. They had Jalen Dalton, they had KJ Henry, just to name a few. So, Mack is doing work in the state again.
That's 13 out of the 14 commitments are from the state of North Carolina. The class heading into today, number 4 in the nation here on Rivals, and we don't know if they'll move up to 3 or not. That's a topic we're going to consistently hit on over the course of the offseason as recruiting continues to generate more momentum. Is Carolina's going to take, we think, around 21. They might take a couple more depending on other attrition. They make room for a guy or two, but certainly if they're going to take 21, they got 7 more. And we'll hit on a lot of that stuff as we do more of these podcasts. But more specifically to Rah-Rah, he narrowed it down to Carolina and Alabama. There are some people that are saying, well, Alabama wanted him to wait, and he didn't want to wait any longer, so he went ahead and took the Carolina spot because those are closing up. So what have you heard about that? What are your thoughts on that? And how big is it to get a guy like that in now when it's still the middle of April and he's not going to sign for another 8 months or so?
Well, in the recruiting game, just because a kid commits, it doesn't end there. The staff with this group that they've assembled, they're still going to have to constantly recruit them and assure them, of UNC and the product on the field. I mean, they seen last year what, we talked about earlier in some other podcasts that, Mack was selling his program on the hype. And last year they proved, they won 7 games. They were in every game. They had a chance to win it. The proof was in their play. So, I mean, just because these kids commit today, tomorrow, the commits that have already committed doesn't mean it's over. It's over when they sign the dotted line if they're going to do the early signing day. So, we've seen kids, Caleb Hood, Michigan State, they've offered about everybody in North Carolina, and we know probably why.
You know why, right? Because Coach Cap is there now.
Coach Cap is up there. So, these kids are going to still get offers and but, I think Ra, he is an example of a kid that might have went to SEC or a Big Ten program in years past. And, but this is a type of player that Carolina probably would have lost, this type of athlete. I love Ra because he's such a unique talent. I mean, he's a tackling machine. I call him a ball hawk. He's all over the field. And I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Chaz, but you saw how Chaz was on the field going from sideline to sideline. Imagine Ra, a 6'3", 205 kid that's going to be in the weight room with Coach Hess and under the tutelage of Bateman and Thigpen, what he can do, because Ra is a track guy. I've seen where he's put up impressive speed numbers, like in the 4.3s. So you put them two combinations as a tackling machine and speed. That's what Mack Brown loves, and I think that's why the staff loves him so much.
When I look at Ra-Ra's film, the first thing that jumps out to me is relentless pursuit. And the Chaz comparison, I think, is pretty good because Chaz is almost maniacal in his pursuit of the football. And we did some stuff on him here recently, and he talked about learning better angles and stuff like that. Ra looks like he's got all the instincts. He's been playing on that side of the ball for a while. And what's interesting about that side of the ball, and you and I have had some of these conversations in the last couple of weeks as this was building up, where do you think he ends up on that side of the ball? Because of his skill set and because of his length, there are options there. Carolina's going to get him on campus, and the staff will have a few options of where they end up putting him.
Well, in talking to Bateman, he's not shy about putting 6 DBs. I mean, and, we don't know that position that he likes. I mean, there's maybe defensive ends and linebacker combo hybrids, we called them. Yeah. We got hybrids, linebackers, and safeties. It's just the luxury to have the best athletes from North Carolina out there. And then this staff can pick and choose where they want them.
Yeah. Jared Wilson committed to Georgia in November. He decommitted early February. He was at a junior day at UNC in very late January, about a week later, so I guess he decommitted from Georgia. And our understanding is at that point, even though he had looked around, he didn't say, okay, well, I'm going to North Carolina, but he started trending that way. And I know that you talked to him yesterday, and tell everybody kind of what you gathered, what he said, and sort of how you think that this kind of played out over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Because from my impression, from my vantage point, it looks like Jared Wilson has been Carolina's to lose since we got to about March.
Well, he did commit to Georgia, and of course, Coach Pittman left Georgia. He was really close to him. He left Georgia, took the Arkansas head coaching job. And, with coaching changes, everybody has different philosophies. And so Jared, he started trending. He visited, UNC, and then actually said he was going to go back the next weekend. And that gave me a vibe that, hey, there's something up with Jared. He must really, because when I talked to him, he just raved about everything about UNC and Coach Brown and everything. So, since that point, I put in my little crystal ball. The forecast, Rivals forecast. I put in that for Jared back, months ago. Yeah. Because
let me jump in. We wrote a Jared Wilson commitment piece in February, the initial one, scrapped it and wrote a new one here the last couple of days. But that's kind of you were steering the nose of that recruitment in this direction pretty quickly, and rarely are you ever off on that kind of stuff. And he told you a couple of reasons that I thought were really interesting about why he decided on UNC, and it's exactly what Mack Brown wants to hear from these guys, because it feeds into one of his pitches about locking down the kids that are in state.
Well, family, that we hear that word all the time. recruits. Even Mac talks about the big family. Jared wants to be close to play for a school where his family can see him, where he has some younger brothers, so he wants to be, the big brother role model for his younger brothers. And just the vibe towards UNC, he loves what Mac Brown's doing, and wants to play. He's built a big, you see it a lot on social media. A lot of these kids have bonded, and he even told me that I asked him about the in-state, if that was a factor, and he said yeah, and he said Keyshawn Silver recruited him, and I said, well, do you consider Keyshawn Silver UNC's top recruiter? He's like, yes, ma'am. So I don't know, Keyshawn has the ability to be a Sunday player, but I think he has a great chance of being a recruiter or a salesman or something, because he's doing real good for Mac.
And I don't know how many people watching this pay much attention to social media, but if you follow these kids on social media, the swell of stay home, bruh, stuff like that has really been picking up. We've seen lots of tweets like that lately of the kids that have already committed. Even some of the guys that haven't, they kind of feed into that. And that's been part of their dialogue lately. And that's been sort of a theme that they've grabbed hold of. And to segue into the locking down the state mantra that Mac set forth the moment he accepted the job, even before he accepted the job when he knew he would, that's really becoming a part of their reality. It's coming to fruition. They have a giant Carolina blue fence, a wall built around the state. It's like the Great Wall of Mac Brown built around the state, and they're keeping the kids in, and they're dominating in state. It's one thing for a coach to say that's what they want to do. And you and I both thought, yeah, Mac will do pretty well in state. I think, 16, 17 months into his tenure, he's exceeded what we thought he could do on the recruiting trail in state. Because remember, before he came on board, what school down the road dominated in state that year or two beforehand? Dave Dorn owned Larry Fedora. They got an embarrassing flip, and embarrassing for Carolina's perspective when Peyton Wilson flipped and some of the things he said. And the Tar Heels, Mac Brown has completely flipped that on its head and then some. If you look at state recruiting in state, NC State that is, recruiting in the state of North Carolina versus UNC, it's night and day right now. Mac is absolutely crushing it, Deana.
Well, it's not even NC State. It's the area schools too. Virginia Tech and South Carolina. They were coming to North Carolina and mining North Carolina. They're having a tougher time doing that right now. Tennessee has always come to North Carolina. Clemson, Clemson's on that different level. They're still going to get their elite kids. And one thing that I'm seeing is Carolina's making some of these top lists of these elite prospects, and that wasn't happening a few years ago. They're at least making progress, and eventually they, under Mac, they may win some of these battles against Clemson. And Peyton Page is a kid that's narrowed down his list to Clemson, Tennessee, and Carolina. Who knows what's going to happen there? He's an in-state kid that likes Coach Brown, but who knows what will happen there? So just the total perception, and we've talked about it before. The national media is eating this up with Mac. Most don't mean this bad, but most time it wasn't positive of Carolina being in the news and everything. But there's nothing they can say negative about this now. Mac is just he's just done phenomenal job.
Well, Mac had the reputation before. People have known since the 90s when he loaded up the program with a tremendous talent that he could recruit. He went to Texas and crushed it at Texas. There was skepticism whether he could, at his age, at this with Carolina football not really being all that relevant for the last 2 decades since he left, if he could do it at UNC again and do it this quickly, and some of the people we've talked to that have a voice outside of this area, this region, have been thoroughly impressed. And I think that they're surprised. And you're right, the Mike Farrells of the world, they're running a lot of things on the Rivals National when they do the little tidbits where they have like 3 little hits they do per piece. And often Mac is in there in some capacity, or UNC recruiting. And then there was a mention about ThinkPen here not long ago. And there was another one about Robert Gillespie. I mean, everybody on the staff is starting to generate some acclaim outside of this area. And Mac obviously is spearheading that, but he's not doing it alone, though. He's got some really good recruiters on the staff. Dre Bly is a really important component, the fact that he's from the 757 in Virginia and he's been in Charlotte for a long time. I mean, he's a well-known name that can get into every door in the 2 best recruiting areas north of Atlanta in this country. And like I mentioned, ThinkPen, Robert Gillespie's been on her before. Bateman's proven to be a pretty good recruiter. Sam Howell, when he tells you why he came to North Carolina, a big part of that is Mac Brown, but another big part of it, which has been undersold, is Phil Longo. So this whole staff, it's not just Mac, this whole staff is fully connected. They're in tune with what Mac wants, and they're executing what Mac wants. Coaching staffs are also teams, and Mac talks about that a lot. And we're seeing that this team, at least from the recruiting standpoint, is executing as a well-oiled machine right now.
Yeah, and don't forget John Lilly and Jovan DeWalt and Coach Searles. I mean, he's bringing in some top talent on the offensive line and everything. But so 13 in-state kids. The only out-of-state kid is Eli Sutton out of Nashville. So, the recruiting. I mean, we can only do so much recruiting wise. Now we're trying to shift focus to 2022 because we're trying to hit up the same recruits. There's not a big net cast out for
not much at all. Mac told us 3 weeks ago that they had between 20 and 30 kids that they were basically recruiting in the class of 21, and they had more spots available then. So one thing that they're doing different from a lot of programs is they're just focusing on a few, and they're really good kids. And like we said, Ra picked them over Alabama. Drake May flipped from Alabama. Jared Wilson in the last month had offers from LSU, Ohio State, and Alabama. He was previously committed to Georgia, and he ends up being a Tar Heel. So they're focusing just on a few of those kids, and that isn't cast that wide. A lot of other programs, a lot of other staffs, rather, offer a ton of kids. I remember a few years ago, Nebraska offered over 300 kids in one class. I know that Larry's last couple of years, they offered in about the 160 range per class. And that's not criticizing him. That's kind of the norm. And they've offered more than 30 in this class. It's just that when he told us that, they already had a bunch of commits, and that's who they were focusing on. And they're going to get a few more kids from out of state. They're also going to get a few more from in-state. But I'll be very interested to see what the final number is in-state. If they do bring in 21, I'm thinking they're looking at maybe 17 in-state kids, which I think would be fascinating. Because Mac has talked a lot about his roster when they really got it going the first time he was in Carolina. Heavy on in-state kids.
Well, some of the in-state targets remaining, I mentioned before, Jabari Ritzy, defensive end from Glenn, Peyton Page, defensive tackle for Dudley High School. And then, you got some of the out, Mac said he would go outside of North Carolina for elite talent. The 757, you got 5-star cornerback Tony Grimes that him and his family love UNC. They love Dre Bly. That factor is it's going to be exciting to see what Tony does. J.J. Jones released his top 10, a tall wide receiver from Myrtle Beach area that's got likes Carolina. Micah Kroll, a wide receiver from East Forsyth. He's still on the list. Tyleek Williams from a defensive tackle from Virginia. Ingram Dawkins from Gaffney, a defensive lineman. So, there's a lot of Kobe Smith. He just released his top 5. Carolina was in it. Logan Taylor from Virginia, who is I think originally from Canada. He's a big offensive lineman. So those guys right there are some of the targets that's still out there. And, you know, I'll still throw in Will Shipley, even though I don't think, you know, even though he has a great relationship with a lot of the Carolina commitments, I think Will's probably heading out of state to Clemson or Notre Dame. So just, you know, we're staying busy. We're trying to reach out to 2022 kids and try to stay ahead of the ball.
I nominate Patrice Renee as the point player on the Logan Taylor recruitment, since they're both Canadians. All right, Deana, awesome stuff. 2 more commitments in the bag for Mac Brown in North Carolina. They got 14 now, 13 from in-state. National ranking going into today, number 4. We'll see if it changes. Whether it does or not, it's still a great day, because you and I both think that Ra-Ra's going to end up a 4-star, and a couple other kids that are currently 3s we think have a really good chance of ending up 4 stars as well. Star rankings don't really matter a ton to us, but we know they matter a lot to the fans and the people on social media who like to criticize when guys are rated lower than they think they should be. So that'll be a fun time as well to cover and report on those things. For Deana King, this is Andrew Jones. You've been watching another football recruiting podcast right here on TarHeelIllustrated.com. You're also watching us on Tar Heel Illustrated, the YouTube channel. Click like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, so every time we put out a video, you get notification that it's there and you can check us out. Thanks for stopping by.